Welcome to FRC Media News for Thursday, March 3rd, 2016. I'm Keith Tebow. On this week's show, Donna Mater previews the grand opening later this week of Fall River's latest marine-based attraction. Fall River Charter Review Commission Chair Mike Mioza talks about an upcoming hearing featuring some well-known local participants. And we break down the local winter postseason with Herald News sports reporter Greg Sullivan. And speaking of the Herald News, let's get things started as we do each week by bringing in the digital city editor of the Herald News, Will Richmond, who this week is joining us by landline. Hey, Will, how are you?
Good, Keith. How's it going?
For some reason, our internet was giving us some problems, so we're going to do it the old-fashioned way in terms of talk show interviews. We're doing it over the phone. Let's start off by talking about the Super Tuesday primary from this past week. Massachusetts, of course, one of the states involved in the Super Tuesday primaries. And the voters of Fall River followed the trend of the rest of the state on both the Democratic and Republican side in nominating both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Was that pretty much expected, Will?
Yeah, certainly Clinton has always been a very popular figure here in Fall River. If you go back to the first election involving her and Barack Obama, she demolished Obama in Fall River, 8 years ago. So that she would pull out ahead of Bernie Sanders should have come as no surprise. I think maybe the fact that she came in with about 56% of the vote compared to 41 for Sanders, that margin may be slightly surprising just given some of the success Sanders did have in Massachusetts.
And of course, on the Republican side, Donald Trump continues to ride the wave of his support across the country by also doing well here locally.
Yeah, Trump's support was very strong in Fall River, picking up 62% of the vote. And he swept all of the greater Fall River towns as well, en route to taking Massachusetts very easily. So, his momentum in Mass was not a problem.
Let me just ask you, Election Commission Chairwoman Elizabeth Camara said that the turnout was about 30% of registered voters. Is that correct?
Right.
And how does that compare to the last city election? It was around that, wasn't it? Or was it a little higher than that?
Yeah, the final election was, I believe, off the top of my head, about 33%.
Okay.
So, a little bit under, but generally primaries are not the strongest showing.
Yep.
I think having active races in both campaigns, in both parties, probably helped to bring people out, though still there were towns in Massachusetts that were, I think, around the 50% mark of turnout. So 30% is still a little low comparatively.
All right. Well, that's good. And, Super Tuesday is done. We won't hear anything here about the presidential election until November, although neighboring Rhode Island will have their primaries in late April. So we'll see how whether Rhode Island follows the trends of Fall River and Massachusetts when they vote later next month. Shifting gears now, Mayor Jazel Correa this week held a news conference with Bristol County Sheriff Tom Hodgson to announce that the city will be receiving some help from the Sheriff's Department and the inmates there to help beautify Fall River as the weather gets warmer. This has been done before across Bristol County. Has it been done before in Fall River? And when was the last time the city used these inmates for this type of work?
Well, the sheriff has had work crews in Fall River a couple of years back, I think, during Will Flanagan's mayoralty regarding, but more specifically used for graffiti removal.
Right.
The sheriff has the graffiti removal tool over there, so that was put to use. I don't recall work crews being in Fall River since Ed Lambert was mayor.
Okay.
So we're talking, a good 8 to 10 years ago.
Right. 2007, I believe, was when Mayor Correa at the time became mayor following Mayor Lambert's.
Right. Yes.
Lambert's term in office. And back then, if you remember, Will, a lot of talk was not just the fact that Sheriff Hodgson wanted to put inmates in Fall River, but he wanted to put inmates that may not have been those that earned the work, the old chain gangs, came up back then. This is definitely not that. These are inmates that are in their last few months of serving time at the prison and are actually being involved because of their good behavior while in prison, correct?
Right. It's similar to what many people may see as they drive along 195
Right.
and they see crews out picking up trash along the highway. It's those type of people. They're identified. They're in the last 6 months of their sentence, so they have the incentive not to try to run off or anything and risk, picking up an even longer sentence when they're close enough to getting out.
Right. So we'll be seeing those crews relatively soon as, boy, we're only a couple of weeks before spring actually starts. Last story I want to talk about today, Will, is actually from neighboring Tiverton, Rhode Island. As many of the viewers know, Tiverton, just at the Fall River border, right off of Stafford Road, looking to be the new location of a casino. The owners of the Newport Grand Casino, which is actually the Twin River people, are actually looking to relocate that facility to northern Tiverton, right at the Fall River line. And this week, the state legislature in Rhode Island is moving forward. The House passed a proposal yesterday. The Senate's going to get it today. And what will happen is it'll actually go to the voters of Rhode Island and Tiverton later on this year. So that's actually moving forward, and this could play an impact on some much-needed jobs here in Fall River.
Yeah, and certainly they are moving pretty quickly in Rhode Island with an eye on what's happening in southeastern Massachusetts
Right.
and the casino deliberations between placing something in Taunton or Brockton. Even in the hearing yesterday in Rhode Island, Rep. Galliston, who represents the Bristol area, noted that Massachusetts must be watching what Rhode Island's doing and kind of expressed some optimism that if they can get the Twin River site up and running in Tiverton, it could have an effect on whether or not something is built in this region of Massachusetts. So certainly the job prospects are there for Fall River potentially, as well as the potential for some reciprocal business as people leave the casino, hit gas stations in the
Right.
Fall River area, businesses, restaurants, all that kind of thing.
Right. And the Massachusetts State Gaming Commission still working on citing that southeastern Massachusetts casino, and we'll have more on that as it gets closer. All right, Will, what's on tap for the Herald News coming up over the next few days?
Well, this Sunday we'll be taking a look at how high schools in the area are helping with the freshman transition, and then next week we'll be right back on board as we continue to look at what's going to happen with DCM and the future of that of trash pickup in Fall River.
All right, Will, we appreciate your time. We'll talk again next week. Have a good week.
All right, you too, Keith.
We'll have more of FRC Media News right after this.
Here are some positions on the newest hot job list for the week of February 29th through March 6th. Home Health Physical Therapist. Job number 691-6586. Greenhouse Assistant. Job number 688-9505. Marketing Specialist. Job number 693-3780. Prevention Assistant Coordinator. Job number 690-3908. Speech Pathologist. Job number 688-5415. Universal Banker. Job number 694-4506. For more information, visit frcmedianews.org or call the Fall River Career Center at 508-730-5000.
Fall River has its share of fun and educational attractions to entice kids of all ages. FRC Media News' Donna Mata previews the grand opening of the Children's Aquarium and Exploration Center.
What can people expect with their children and families when they come here to the center?
They can expect to play in a very interactive, hands-on manner. We have a touch tank. Half of it will be local, half of it will be tropical, and they can touch sea urchins and starfish and hermit crabs. They can also view tanks of local species and creatures from far away. This weekend we will have the smallest octopus on the planet. It's a dwarf octopus. So that'll be special. We have a few surprises for this coming weekend, which is our opening weekend. The other stuff that they can do is do arts and crafts. They can have a book read to them about the ocean. They can pretend they're in a lab and do some x-rays over there by the x-ray table, as well as check out our birthday party room. We'll be having a Netflix. We'll have some documentaries on Netflix just running if they want some downtime, if they want to have something to eat. And the other thing is dressing up as a sea creature or a mermaid.
Oh, what fun!
Or a pirate.
Or a pirate. Okay, so you get a choice. And is that the birthday celebration?
That's just our little area behind us over there. There's puppets and dress-up chest where kids can dress up and experience the aquarium as a mermaid or as a sea creature.
Now, Melissa, you and I met randomly way before I was working here at Cable and way before this center was open, actually. I remember we met in the dollar store. Do you?
Yeah, I remember.
I know. And we had talked a little bit about this. So it's been a long time in the making. Tell me, why did it take so long and what do you expect from this point?
Well, about 8 months ago, the space that you're looking at now, the first year was a lot of fundraising, gaining people's confidence. During that first year, Jerry Donovan had been looking for spaces for us to rent or for him to donate, and he ended up donating this space, and he was excited to do so. So we've been in here for free since in the last year. So the first year was getting people's attention, fundraising, paperwork, and getting ideas and grabbing people. You love that octopus. Grabbing people who would be able to maintain these tanks. Bob Schenk from Animal Instincts ended up becoming our curator in that process. I actually have a picture over there. It's 2014 in August. So less than, I don't know, what is that, less than a year and a half ago, this space had a rug and pool tables, and it was a completely different space. So we've really renovated with the helps of a lot of different contractors in the area.
So it took a long time to get up and running, but how do you feel now that you're having the grand opening this weekend?
Very excited, very hopeful. We've had so many people tell us about their children coming and how they've been. We've already had people calling us thinking we're open. I feel so bad. Say, no, we're not open yet. I just can't believe it's just been such a dream come true. I mean, it was literally a dream. And I figured if I meet the right people, and meeting Bob Schenk was one of the right people to meet, then we would end up having a successful aquarium. And if I failed, then I tried. So it looks like it's working though right now.
Now an update on the work being done by the Fall River Charter Review Commission. Donna sat down with Chairman Mike Mayoza to discuss how the former mayors of Fall River are set to lend their input into the process.
Yeah, we have a meeting. It's a public hearing. It's scheduled for the Liberal Club on March 31st. I believe that's a Thursday. At 6 o'clock, and what we're going to be doing at this meeting, this was an idea of one of our commissioners, Commissioner Assad, to invite elected officials, so current serving elected officials, the mayor, the city council, and the school committee, and then former elected officials to come before us. And what's going to be unique about this, if all former elected mayors come, I've identified 7 former mayors that are still living, still, I believe, all of this reside in the city. I don't know if we've ever had 7 former mayors and the current mayor together in all rooms, so in one room. So that would be unique, I think, in of itself. But that being said, I mean, the real purpose of this meeting is these are folks that have been in the battle trenches. They know what's worked. They know it doesn't work. They know what needs to be changed. So we want to hear from them. The commission wants to hear from them firsthand to say, okay, this is the things when I was serving as a mayor, a city councilor, a school committee person, these are the struggles that we had, and these are the things that we need to have fixed. And you know, if we get 8 former mayors or 7 former mayors in the current, we may hear a reoccurring theme. You know, to say, you know, these are the things that we'd like to see changed, and it'll give the commission something to go work for. So we're really excited about this meeting. We're hoping that we have a good turnout. I mean, this, I've always said, Donna, we're all in this together, whether it be current elected officials, former elected officials, residents, BCC, I mean, the schools, everybody, we're all in this because this is all, the idea of this is for better government. And if we can create a better government, I think, you know, obviously everybody's going to benefit that. Just not Fall River, too. Even the communities that, you know, are adjacent to us. And so I'm really excited about this process, and I'm hoping that this is going to be.
I know. You have to read the names.
You want me to read the names?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely.
So we have obviously the current mayor, Jaisal Carrere. We have former mayor Sam Sutter, Will Flanagan, Ed Lambert, Carlton Viveris, John Mitchell, Dan Bogan, and Bob Carrere. I didn't read them in the order that they served. And I think I've identified, I hope I didn't miss anybody in there. I think I have them. This is a quick list I had put together before I came on. So it's exciting if we could get most, if not all of them, here to hear from them firsthand. What worked for them? What would they like to see better? I know some of them, I won't mention any names, have talked to me about charter. They seem to be in tune, which is really, really good to hear. When I've met them outside, they've talked to me about charter, so some of these former mayors are really engaged. I will say this, I know at least one of these former mayors was considering running for the charter commission as well. He'll go nameless, but so that's exciting that our former elected officials are engaged. They're following this process. I believe they believe in this process. I mean, I've always said that the only way we can go is up. You know, you don't touch a document for 80 years. You can only, to me, only improve on that document. Again, I want to make our charter relevant. It's been irrelevant for so many years. I want to make it a living, breathing document, that we modernize it. We know that we're in line with Mass state law, and more importantly for me, or as importantly as I should say, I want to have a mechanism for a regular review. Nobody should ever have to go out and collect 12,000 signatures again over a 4-year period. That's how long it took us to do it, but nobody should ever have to do that again.
But you did it.
We did it. I'm very proud.
Successful.
I'm very proud of the small group that stuck with me over 4 years. It was a roller coaster. Many times we looked at each other and said, "Oh my, we're going to make this happen," but we did. And their perseverance, is just amazing.
Welcome back. The local high school winter sports season is wrapping up, with the postseason just starting this week. We're going to talk local sports with another representative from our partners at the Herald News. I'm joined by staff sports reporter Greg Sullivan. Greg, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Keith, I am legitimately happy to be here, and I didn't realize what a cool facility you have.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. We're going to do this, by the way, more often. We want to talk a little local sports, and we'll bring you in from time to time to talk about that. Winter sports season, postseason basketball this week. Thus far, the local high school Fall River teams not faring too well. As of today, as we're speaking, 4 teams have already played, 4 losses, so they're already eliminated. Let's start with Durfee boys basketball. They had a 10-10 season. They lost this week to Needham. Give people sort of an update on the Hilltoppers this year, and obviously they lost. They're out of the season is officially over, but what kind of season did the Hilltoppers have in terms of the men? And the
Durfee, from what I saw about a third of their games.
Yeah.
They kind of played up or down to the competition an awful lot.
Yeah.
The very best I saw them was in a close loss to Brockton at home, and Brockton played very well that night. Very big, good outside shooting, and Durfee hung right with them. And then you saw other games where they lost or barely won, and you're wondering, was it the same team? But, I mean, you see that all the time, and not just high school sports, everything. So the Farrington kid looked, he had a good, consistent year and everything, and they were more fun to watch than I anticipated.
Right. And, the Big Three this year really wasn't as powerful as it has been in the past. A lot of times we will talk about Durfee teams past, but as a whole, the conference was pretty much middle of the road. There wasn't like one of those, usually Brockton, New Bedford, or Durfee will have sometimes a runaway season and be a high seed in the South Section tournament. Not really this year.
Nope, not so. Not so much. Well, I'm still curious to see how Brockton is going to do in the South. They play a killer schedule.
Right.
If they wanted to soften it up a little bit, could they be a higher seed? And you'd say, yeah, Brockton could do it. So, not quite mailing it in on them yet, but yeah, it may not have been as up to down as powerful as before.
Right. Let's switch to Durfee girls now. They lost this week to Attleboro in the South Section opening round, 57-44. Talk about the Lady Hilltoppers.
Their top scoring player this year was Jordan Gorvin. And it's another case of we have a lot of parents in the past 15, 20 years who put a little wrinkle. She's a DYN Jordan, so you got to be careful not to misspell it. For
Right.
one thing, no, I'm old school.
Especially in the newspaper,
Mary and
right?
John, yeah.
Yeah.
And that kid, I saw her have a great game. I think it was against Dighton Rehoboth,
Yeah.
where she had maybe 8 3-pointers, and it's just. It's an effortless shot for her, so she was good. And I think that's a kid. I was watching her the other night in the loss to Attleboro, and there are times she just like zoomed down the court. And I'm not always. Sometimes I think kids don't even realize how athletic they are.
Yeah.
And she put it into high gear a few times and left people in the dust. And then a lot of role players after that. The other senior, Nicole Emsley, she did a lot of good things for them. So I think they got what they did well for what they had.
Right. Right, and that's always the case. You never know from year to year with high school students how it's going to work. Diamond Girls played as well the other night, and it's a good story locally in that they lost to another local team, Westport Wildcats, but they fell 37-32. Talk about the Bengals, Lady Bengals.
I didn't have the privilege of seeing them in person this year for the first time in a lot of years.
Yeah.
But I believe they split with Conley, or they split with Westport during the regular season. So what it is, if you go to watch a Diamond game, mostly you're going to see a bunch of not gigantic kids, just a bunch of scrappy kids.
Exactly.
And it's they were able to play the good teams on their schedule pretty close, and I think they beat the teams they were supposed to beat. Right,
and the other local girls team who played this week was the Bishop Connolly Lady Cougars. They also fell, unfortunately, yesterday to Greater New Bedford Voc Tech. Not a pretty score, but again, a solid effort, I would think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And trust me, a lot of people are going to lose big to Greater New Bedford Voc Tech. Some people still wondering why they're in Division 4.
One of those deals, right?
Things are given consideration for vocational schools and everything, but it was pretty much a foregone conclusion they were going to be a little too much for Conley. But Conley, they did some good things this year.
One of the great things that we still have hope for local high school basketball is actually tonight. Actually, out of all the boys and girls teams for the 3 high schools here in Fall River, the boys Bishop Connolly team had the best record. They get the higher seed in the tournament. They will play Cohasset tonight locally here.
Yes,
Conley? It's right here at Conley. So tonight you have an opportunity to see the Cougars play in postseason play. How have the Cougars been this year? They've been one of the more successful local teams in the past few years, obviously.
They got off a little bit of a rough start. Then they hit their groove. They missed out on the league title because of a couple early losses. But they showed me new toughness when they played Durfee. They lost. But they played differently than I had seen them play in every other game this year. They kind of risk. I don't want to sound like a Cougar pun or anything, but they actually growled that game. They were tough. They threw up into a higher gear. Maybe they pushed and shoved, and it was a real good game. And you'd like to see that come out tonight too.
Right. And I believe they're a 4 seed in the section.
I think that's where they are. Yeah.
So they got a good shot again to make a run, which they've done, as we know, in the past, being champs. What, 2 years ago, 3 years ago now?
3 years ago, state champs, and back to the Eastern Mass final.
Correct.
They went to the Garden 2 years in a row, which is fabulous.
Right. One other thing I want to bring up with you before we leave, you've done a series in the paper that debuted this week on a Durfee High School team 40 years ago that had a memorable game in the postseason against Catholic Memorial. For those of us who are nostalgic, talk about that two-part series.
Okay, I wasn't at that game 40 years ago. It was Catholic Memorial. Ronnie Perry was the player in Massachusetts. In fact, he sort of was for several years.
Right. Went to Holy Cross, I
Holy
believe,
Cross,
after that.
yes. Yeah. Drafted by both the Sox and the Celtics.
Right.
So, and he was I didn't go to this game, but I had always heard about it. And Durfee's used to playing before big playoff crowds and everything, but the people involved who went to it always said to me, this one was something different. It was almost like the air was vibrating. It was supercharged. And you look at the lineup Durfee had. Durfee had 3 future Division I players in the lineup. When will you see that again? Or when have you seen it?
Right.
I mean, so just everything was there for a fabulous game, and I had the pleasure of Ronnie Perry talking to him, just a total gentleman. And yeah, I had one older guy who I saw in an email or a comment exchange said, he's probably like 60 years old. He said it was one of the 10 best sporting events, not just high school, sporting events he ever attended.
Right.
It was just something different and spectacular.
So please, if you haven't had a chance, check out Greg's articles at the Herald News. Greg, we'll do this again soon. Next time, maybe we'll talk baseball.
Sounds good. I might wear a tie next time. You show me up,
okay.
Keith.
That's okay.
Does Richmond wear a tie?
No, not from. He's in the office. You see how he
yeah.
dresses there. All right, we'll have more of FRC Media News right after this.
Meet Domino. He has a very short attention span. He's about 4 years old. We're calling him an American Bulldog mix. He's a very friendly dog. We suggest no cats. And probably because of his energy level, he shouldn't be around too many small children. Older children would be fine. He'd be a perfect family dog. I meet Helena. She is about 3 years old. She's a very sweet cat, but I think she'd rather be the only cat in your house. We don't know how she's going to do with dogs, but she is very wanting to be your one and only. About 3 years old again. She's new to the room, so she's not quite comfortable with everything that goes around her. But I think that if it was maybe only one cat, she might be able to deal with it, but she'd prefer not to.
That's all for this edition of FRC Media News. You can catch this program Thursdays and Fridays at 6 p.m. But of course, you can always check out the latest in Fall River news by visiting our website at frcmedianews.org. For all of us here at FRC Media News, I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great week.